Hello everybody and welcome to Studio One here at the National Film School at IADT, the Campus for Creative Industries. My name is Jean Rice and I'm the Chair of Film and Television here at the National Film School. Also welcome to our live audience here. They are comprised mostly, at a look, film television students, some master's students, some lecturers and the odd industry person. So you're all very welcome here to the National Film School. And also, you're very welcome to the diaspora tuning in from Irish embassies all over the world. Just so you know, as we stated previously, this is being recorded live and will be disseminated via the Irish Embassy network and their collaboration with DIFF. We've been doing this quite a while with DIFF, a number of years now, but this year marks our inaugural collaboration with them as their official education partners. So it's a special one for us, which is why I would like to thank, first of all, Gráinne Humphreys, Sam, Peggy McHale, Emma Chambers and all the unsung heroes at the Dublin Film Festival for making this possible. And from our end, I would like to thank Ronan O'Murlaha, Jeremiah Ambrose and Barry Dignam for frankly putting up the cash. So thank you very much. We're all huge fans of the Dublin Film Festival. We make films that we hope will get there, but even when they don't get there, we're all avid viewers. So we're very much looking forward to this 2026 version of it. Which brings me to the reason we are here, and I'm very delighted to welcome 5 fantastic screenwriters and directors of films which are having their Dublin premiere, if I'm correct, here this year. I've had the great pleasure and privilege of watching these films in advance. We will be talking about them as we go through, and if you haven't got tickets yet and if they're not sold out, I would urge you to do so. I loved the film so much that I actually went and, listen to this, Gráinne, bought my own tickets to go see these films and see them on a bigger screen. So that's how impressed I am. And actually, I've been doing this a long time, and I have to say, it really struck me as I watched the films of these 5 screenwriters and directors, what a great panoply of genres and types of films. And I really sat back and marvelled at this sort of how sophisticated our filmmaking has become and how outward-looking our stories are and how they should stand shoulder high with films made from any other industry in the world. So with that, allow me to introduce the panel. Before I do so, what we're going to do here today is I'll introduce the panel. We'll talk a little bit about their films. I know you won't have seen them yet, so we're going to keep it quite general about the craft and the creativity around that, if that's okay with you. And if I don't talk too much, we will have time for Q&As afterwards. Is that all right? Great. So right beside me, I have Aisling Karstein. We've just discovered we were born and raised in the same town. So I think that's a good thing. Aisling is the writer of No Ordinary Heist. Aisling, congratulations on that. When I watched it, I thought I was watching a Michael Mann film, I have to say. It was absolutely. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. We'll come back to that. I have questions about it a little later. And beside Aisling is Mark O'Halloran. I think the only question we have for you, Mark, is how many hours are in your day? Mark is a writer, director, actor, and whatever you're having yourself. Mark has written Everybody Digs Bill Evans, a marvellous, marvellous film about the great musician Bill Evans. It looks sublime. I have to say that. It was lit by a graduate, Piers McGrail, who did a fantastic job, I have to say. We'll go through that in a minute. But the one thing I do have to say to you is that Adam and Paul is still one of my favourite films. Mark wrote that. So much so that when anything goes wrong in our house, we say, sorry, Janine. So there you go.
As long as I'm not wiping myself with a potato bag, you're grand.
You haven't been to the Luz in Dunleary yet. Beside Mark is Glenn McQuaid. Glenn McQuaid has ruined the electric picnic for me forever because Glenn McQuaid's film, the restoration of Grayson Manor was shot in Stradbally Hall. So we have literally seen behind what goes on there. But Glenn is late of this parish as well, he informs me. I think you were here around the same time as me. You use a better moisturiser.
I think 1997 I was here and I did a course called Interactive Media. It wasn't film, it was burgeoning media, which at the time was oddly the CD-ROM. We weren't really even talking about the internet.
Glenn is the writer and director of, as I say, the restoration of Grayson Manor, and it is having its Dublin premiere Saturday the 28th, I believe.
Saturday 28, 6:30.
And we'll do the ads later. And beside Glenn, we have Kieran Cray, Kieran Samantha Nobody. Thank you very much for that. I again felt I was watching a Ken Loach film, and actually what I really admired about your film is how you made the invisible visible. So it was a really moving film. Congratulations on that. And last but not least, David Gleeson. David's film, I believe, is opening the film festival.
It is, yeah. World premiere.
World premiere. Once Upon a Time in a cinema. And for somebody of my age group, shall I say, was a fantastic trip down memory lane of the cinemas that we grew up in, long before the omniplexes, long before we had movies or Netflixes or Apple TVs, when going to the cinema was the thing you did, man, woman, child, rich, poor. And
sometimes the audience is more entertaining than the movie.
Well, we'll come back to that in a minute, but I did like all your details. It made me kind of shudder with delight, you know, because I was that girl who had the torch shone into my eyes. And in those days, cinemas had double seats. The people were not there to watch the movie, shall we say. And you spent the whole time lying about your age, so you get to see a raging bull or whatever, you know, even though the guy who ran the cinema lived next door and you couldn't possibly be 18. He'd just given you money for your confirmation 2 weeks beforehand.
A bit trickier if he was your dad, as it was in my case.
Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. So that is a brief introduction to the guests who are giving so kindly of their time here. If you don't mind, we're going to start a little general because everybody here is curious about what next. We were talking a little in the green room about how we all ended up in movies, and I don't think many of us were lucky enough to go to film school. They really weren't around when we were growing up, shall we say. So if I may start with you, Aisling, how did you end up on the red couch here beside me? And don't say sheer bad luck.
Because I couldn't get a real job. I loved writing in school and there wasn't really a sort of path to follow. So I went into journalism and I was writing. But just the hardest thing was who to send it to, what to do with it. So I think that was sort of the main roadblock and issue. But I just kept doing it on the side for years. And, you know, eventually when schemes would come up or labs would come up and I'd apply for them, you know, started to make progress that way. And yeah, that's probably how I got here.
And if I may, you know, No Ordinary Heist is a really tightly written thriller. Fantastic, I have to say. I looked at your IMDb and you'd written shorts before that. Mm-hmm. What was the leap, you know, from the short to this finely tuned, sophisticated thriller?
Funny enough, I think the shorts came after the feature because I was contacted. I mean, it's probably gone back 6 years at this point because of COVID and everything else. About 6 years ago, I got an email from a guy. Thought it was a scam, the usual. Hi, I want you to write a film with me. I've read some of your stuff and I really like it. Oh, okay, whatever. But he, you know, wrote back and said, you know, do you want to chat about it and everything else? It's about, you know, the Northern Bank robbery. So I said, look, I don't really want to do a political thing. It's not really my bag. So kind of left it for a while, and then he, you know, said, okay, I've written a sort of a draft. You want to read it? And I said, okay, I'll read it, but I don't really know what I can do with it. So I read it, and it wasn't great. Now, I'll be honest. Sorry, Colin, it wasn't great. So I said, look, I can, you know, I'm not doing anything writing-wise. I don't have any credits. I can, you know, do as much as I can do with you and see how we go. So yeah, we kind of just started from page one again, and I never met him until we shot the film. 6 years later.
More about this later, I think.
Didn't know what he looked like. I had to Google what he looked like because I
Wow.
didn't know what the guy looked like.
We might come back to that a little bit later. If I could go around the couch. Mark, you were an actor first before you were a writer.
Yeah, I trained as an actor at the Gaiety School of Acting, and I was a theatre actor for a long time, and then I started writing short plays that went on at like Bewley's Cafe Theatre or whatever. And then somebody asked me, a producer asked me, did I have anything film-wise? And I had been keeping a vague diaries about people on the street and all of that. And so I pitched Adam and Paul to them, and they said, yeah, write it. Which was a very traumatic event, actually, because I had to leave the office going like, I have no fucking idea. I've never written a screenplay.
I've only gone and made a promise.
I pitched something, but it was accidental. I've never been to university or anything like that, so I wasn't making a grand career plans for myself. But it's been a series of happy accidents, I think.
Yeah, and I think we'll be discovering as the conversation goes on that quite often the filmmaker's trajectory is happenstance with misfortune.
Well, it is, but I think one of the things that is important is that you end up creating a team of colleagues that you work with. Like, that's what happens, and that sometimes is through social and smaller work things, and you gradually you build a community that you work with, and I think that's part of actually your career trajectory.
But you know, when you left that office going, oh blimey, now I have to go and do it, you know, and I guess, you know, because we've got an audience of film students here, and rightly or wrongly, you can tell me later, you know, we talk about structure and format and all of those things, you know.
Well, my second feature was made. It was a film called Garage, and I was at this Q&A, and somebody asked me about the 3-act structure, and I'd never heard of it before. So like, but as an actor, you read a lot of scripts, and so you absorb kind of what it is that you need to do to structure a story, beginning, middle, and end, all of those sort of things. And so that was kind of in there.
That innate.
Yes, but I now find, whereas before I always reacted against a kind of a structural thing, I now enjoy working using structural analysis to analyze the scripts or the drafts that you have. You know, I do enjoy that.
Yeah, and we might come back to that a little later when we talk about you know, how we work. Glenn, this is your second. You had before this you had I Sell the Dead, which I thought was just what you did for a living till I looked it up. So you've been writing for a while, you know. What was your journey? You told us earlier that you didn't study film, so what was that kind of leap that made you think, this is what I want, I'm crazy enough to want to do that, or this is my North Star, this is how I want to live my life?
I think from early days, when I was very young, I was obsessed with horror, the horror genre. Bride of Frankenstein and Dracula and all the old black and whites. So I found, oddly enough, great comfort in the fantasy of these movies, the dark fantasy, where you're sort of daring yourself to be scared, but in a contained way, you know. So when I was maybe 15 or 16, I wanted to be a horror makeup artist. So I was just putting liquid latex on my face and blood, and found great escapism through all of that creativity. And then as I got older, I drifted away from the film bug, ended up working in advertising and so on, but really was not happy, and then just followed the path towards genre work again, and putting a personal stamp on that. And I suppose in reflection, what was great for me about genre was always that I was quite a shy, queer kid growing up in the 70s and 80s in Ireland, and there was a lot of weight on my shoulders, but through genre, and then realizing that genre, the work that I was responding to was heavily queer-coded, it just felt like an interesting path for myself to go down. You know, my work is definitely queer. It's not so much coded anymore, but just that finding self-expression through something that gave me so much hope when I was younger is the goal.
Yeah, yeah. And Kieran, you're very interesting, Kieran, because we were talking in the green room later, so you've come a very circuitous route to filmmaking, you know.
I suppose you could say that, yeah. Basically, I had no real interest in film or theatre, didn't read books.
Don't say that
I know,
out loud.
I know. Then, like at 35 years of age, my first child was born. And I said, I need to do something different. So I did a part-time acting course in the IADT School of Acting. Started doing acting and I was pretty crap. But in that process, I wrote my first small little sketch, which we put in the Fringe, Dublin Fringe, and I really enjoyed that. And from there, I just bit the bug from there. And so I did 3 plays. So first play did great, second play bombed, third play was kind of helped me on. But at that stage, then I was starting to actually watch some film. And so then I wrote my first film, Parked, which did with Colomini. That did quite well. And
A feature film was
feature
your
film,
first,
first film, yeah. And then from the experience that I realised I actually want to direct as well. So it's kind of like resetting the clock. So I took back and do a couple of shorts. So I did a short with Aidan Gillen, which was great because Aidan, great guy, like, you know. And then I just went from there and just kept writing. And I've always, I suppose, reared a bit against the norm because I like the social end of film. As you said, like you said with Ken Loach, I love Ken Loach or Mike Leigh or whatever. Like, that's what attracts me. Like horror now wouldn't be me. I mean, it's a great career. I love it.
Mr. Gleeson, yours is even,
Yes.
you can beat him in your start too.
No, I don't know about that. For me, sorry, did you have a question? Or should
No,
I just
again,
go?
you know, what made you take that leap? You know, obviously, we know you grew up around
Yeah.
the best film school in the world,
Correct.
watching films,
Yeah.
you know, but then we were talking in the green room, you had a couple of diversions before you got...
Yeah, big time. But all leading towards the same goal, which was to direct, really, more so than writing. I consider myself a director cursed with the ability to write, because when you're a writer, you spend your whole life, it feels like you have homework constantly. And I always have a script hanging over my head. So I was the kid in school who, you know, when the teacher told us to write a composition in primary school, the day I got attacked by an eagle is always one I always remember. We'd have to write like half a page or a page, and I would write 17 pages, and the teacher would read it out. You know, so I was always told I was a good writer. And but I never wanted to be a writer, but I decided I'm going to be a writer. But then my father was in the film business. He owned some cinemas down the country. So that was the family business. And in 1981, Gone with the Wind was re-released in cinemas, and I saw it in my dad's cinema on a Monday night, and it just blew me away. The whole epic sweep of it, Max Steiner's score, Vivian Leigh, I think the character Scarlett O'Hara is the greatest female character ever in drama. It just blew me away, and I realized, man, I could do what the teachers tell me I'm good at, combined with what I love, and I realized, boom, director. So that was it. I wanted to be a director. But I had no idea how to do that. So anyway, I left school in the mid-'80s. There was no film industry in Ireland. There was no film school. And I ended up working in the civil service in Limerick, which I made a movie about. It's my first film, Cowboys and Angels. I'm kind of strip mining my life.
We have a
for
student writing a
movies.
thesis about it this year.
Oh, really?
There you go.
Interesting. So I ended up joining an amateur drama group, and I told them I wanted to direct, and it was in a poor area of Limerick. They couldn't find a director for it. It was this competition called Seamsha, where the city was divided into different sectors. So they couldn't get anyone to direct in this place, so they gave it to me, this 20-year-old kid. So I'd never seen a play in my life. I'd never actually been to one, so I wrote my own play. So that's kind of how I started in that. So I wrote a play. I started in theatre. Anyway, cut to several years later, I decided, okay, I got to make a movie. So I was in Scotland, so I got a job working offshore in the North Sea oil industry. And I figure, okay, I can spend 5 years hustling, trying to get money to make a short film, or I can work offshore and save money and make a short film. 5 years later, I was still offshore. So I decided to hell with this. I went to New York and I did a 6-week film course. And that's where I met my wife and producer. And I wrote Cowboys and Angels, my first movie, and 7 years later we made it, you know. So, you know, so it's a long, long journey, and I wouldn't have stayed that course because I had many different opportunities to pursue proper careers. I wouldn't have stayed that course if the calling wasn't as strong or stronger than someone who's called to be the priesthood.
Actually, we might come back to that in a minute, because we always talk about here in film school what the first Monday after graduation looks like, and you don't have your lecturers bawling you out of it and wondering why you're late for set. So we might come back to that later. I'm very interested, if I may, we have 3 writer-directors here on the sofa. We have a lot of our film students will write and direct. It's interesting what you say, you know, a reluctant writer, but you're generating material. I wonder, could we have a discussion perhaps a little bit about the challenges of that? You know, as you write, are you thinking in pictures or how you might, or it's a low budget, so I better take this scene out? Can we talk a little bit about that perhaps? And Glenn, I might start with you.
Sure. Well, with the restoration at Grayson Manor, I co-wrote it with a
Larry
Clay MacLeod Chapman, who's an author, writes a lot of books, and it's funny what you say. I knew it wasn't going to be a giant budget, so I decided right from the get-go we would make a movie that was shot entirely, 95% in a mansion. In this case, we ended up in Stradbally Hall, you know. So there were some self constraints that we put in place pretty effortlessly. You know, we wanted to make something that could be contained and potentially shot anywhere. The fact that we got to shoot it in Laois was just icing on the cake, but the design of the project was that it could be shot basically anywhere. We just needed a mansion. I suppose somewhat of a reluctant writer as well, but I do love the process. I'm in it to be working with actors on set. You know, everything is to get to those precious 6 weeks. So whatever I can do to get there, I'm doing. But it's been very beneficial for me to work with other writers as well. I wrote I Sell the Dead by myself, and it's an odd little almost anthology movie. Talk about like there's not much of a structure to it. There's certainly not a 3-act structure. So over the years, then just doing workshops and writing more. I have an audio drama show called Tales from Beyond the Pale, where we have like 50 plus sort of Twilight Zone style episodes as a podcast, and that's been tremendous for me as a writer, because I knew whatever I was writing was getting produced. We produced it ourselves. We financed it ourselves, myself and Larry Fessenden in New York. And so to be writing and not looking for outside validation was very beneficial to me, because the sky was the limit. So I love writing now, but again, for me, it's a means to be on set working with actors.
And Kieran, you know, you wrote and directed Samantha and Nobody. Are you kind of self-censoring, if you will, when you write, saying, well, I wonder how I would direct that? Or is it all, do you just wear your screenwriting cap and then off and on goes the directing hat?
Well, I suppose, first of all, I'm not a reluctant writer. Writing is what I love. When you're a writer-director, you've got to get used to rejection. And so when I get rejected, the first thing I do is I pick up the computer and start writing every time, because just to get back into it, like, you know. But when I write, I write in pictures. I just see it in my head and I just write it. So I think as a writer-director, for me, I think it's kind of easier in making a film, because if I had somebody else's script and then I had to try and reinterpret as a director and put my shape on it, but I know what the script is. I've written it. It's already, the picture already in my head. So I find it's a very easy process to go from writing it to actually directing it. But I mean, it is difficult. And say like Samantha Nobody was a low enough budget film too. And so when you write it, I would have written it a certain way, and then I'd revisit it. And so I'd say probably 80%, maybe 75% of the film is outside.
Yeah.
So like by moving something from inside a location to outside a location, it just makes it more doable. Because like Samantha Nobody and my previous film, like they're both shot in 12 days, 2 6-day weeks. Because if you get it for 6 weeks or for 2 weeks, that's only 2 weeks camera hire. Everything goes down, 2-week crew hire, so everything goes down. So you really have to be very attentive. I mean, you can still, as a writer, we can write something and we can change it to somewhere else and get the very same meaning out of it. Do you know what I mean? Because I mean, like, if you're writing for a certain period of time, I mean, 95% of this craft is actually learning what to do.
Sure.
And it's a 5% inspiration, like, you know, so... and I produced a lot of my stuff as well, so I kind of have the producer head on me as well, so kind of to make sure that I get it in
A
where I want
Renaissance
to.
man.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But,
A man for all seasons then, to keep the
yeah,
film
maybe.
references going. And David, you self-declared reluctant writer, and yet you have credits as a writer. You know, how did you find that when you were just writing? I think Tolkien was what?
Yeah. After my second movie, which was The Front Line, bank robbery, heist movie set in Dublin, the next movie I had that I wanted to make was a $100 million science fiction movie, time travel movie. And I ended up selling that to Sony Pictures in Hollywood. And that kind of put me on a trajectory as a writer for hire. You know, so I've written for Disney, Universal, all the studios. And so I've been in that game, you know. But I've found I'm able to compartmentalize. You know, when I'm a writer, I'm a professional writer, you know, and I'm able to deliver on deadlines and I take good notes and everything. One thing I guess that directing teaches you is not to be precious about notes or precious about the words on the page, because the screenplay is basically a roadmap for the movie, you know. And I think that's the mark of the difference between a professional and an amateur is that you don't take notes personally, or it's always hard to hear notes because you're so emotionally invested in your movie. But usually the people that I've met, you know, every executive in the industry, every executive at Screen Ireland, unfortunately, they're all very clever people, and they're usually very good notes, you know. And so you're learning all the time. I'm able to compartmentalize. When I'm writing a screenplay to direct it, I'm solely the writer. And when I'm directing, I'm like, who the hell wrote this shit? You know, so, but I do think in terms of visuals, you know. It also makes it a little bit harder as well. The more you've directed, I find it makes it a little bit harder to return to the blank page because you're more experienced. And in your first scripts, your first drafts, you're writing stuff that you know for a fact will not be in the movie. You know, before you've made your first film, you're not quite as aware of that. So you have to work through a lot of stuff that you know for a fact will not be in the movie, but you still have to write it and work through it.
Sure.
And, you know, that just makes it a little bit more painful. You know, but it's a process and a hugely rewarding process. And I got to say, one thing I've always said, if I ever ran a film school, how I would run it is I would take all the students on day one to the movies. Just pick any movie anywhere. Transformers 4, whatever. I'd bring the whole class to the movies. Day 2, I'd say, okay, we're all going to the movies and we go and see that movie again. And we would do that every day for about 14 days. And I think that's how you learn what movies are. Because eventually you get beyond the shit dialogue or the great acting or the music, you know, the wonderful score, whatever. And you really start to break down movies, you know. And that's how I learned, you know, just being forced by the fact that I worked in the cinema to watch the same movie 15, 16, 17 times. And eventually it seeps into you, you know. I think, you know, the key to directing certainly is, you know, just to watch movies. Always.
If I may add an addendum to that, will they please read a book on the bus on the way into the movies? I would,
totally.
I would hope for as well. But yeah, I mean, film schools are a relatively new, you know, institutions, and long before, you know, people just watched movies and learned their craft that way. If I may turn, sorry, I haven't been ignoring you two beside me. You guys are unburdened by the desire to become directors as yet.
Absolutely
Ooh.
not.
Oh, do you want no?
No.
Self-declared. Mark,
I'm going to be directing a film this year, I think.
way, hey, you heard it here first, folks. Fantastic. But if I may then, just in reference to the films you've made here, both of you wrote films about real-life person, event, and in your case also. Will you talk to me a little bit about the challenges? I know Bill Evans, it was based on...
It was based on a novel.
Yeah, a novel, yeah.
There was IP, as they'd
Yeah.
say. And so that was... But also, both the director and myself are huge Bill Evans fans. So there was that, and we pored over archival materials and listened to great live recordings, and there's a lot of photographic documentary about his life, and so that was all there. So, it was...
You can see that influence in the film, actually.
Yeah.
And ever since we watched it, Bill Evans has been on in our house every night too.
Oh,
So thank you for that.
Gorgeous.
Aisling, you obviously made a film by, these fantastic array of violent chancers and put-upon bank staff that happened only in 2004. So what were the challenges around that, in terms of representing those? I know they have never been caught, as you say, as it says in the end of the movie.
We had a very busy legal team. We had to change names several times. Like there was, even when you fictionalise them, like one was almost too close to something else, so had to change a lot of names. The storylines, like you couldn't go too far away, but you obviously had to make it a little bit more interesting. Yeah, we tried to stick to the real events as much as possible, because I know if I'm watching something, I really want it to be, if it is a true story, I want it to, be as close to the true story as you can. But I had said to Colin, the director, I don't want to do a political film. I've no interest in politics. I've no interest in, let's, say who it is, blah, blah, blah. So, but I think the legal team made it pretty clear that we don't need to make it clear, because they don't officially know who did it. So we kind of got away with it like that. So yeah, it wasn't too bad in the end.
And you have a lovely central relationship between the sort of Éanna Hardwick, the sublime Éanna Hardwick, and the fantastic Eddie Marsan, two of my favourite actors, at the centre of it. How much kind of artistic license did you take, Well,
look, all we knew is they were co-workers. We didn't really know anything else about them. So, of course, we gave them sort of a history together, and, they were from different sides of the tracks, different, sort of white collar, blue collar. But apart from that, you're going to have two people that are very different in a tricky situation. And, that's pretty much it.
And just to stay on your movie for a moment, there's a fantastic kind of set of sequences when, I'm not going to ruin it here, but two bank tellers must steal money from a bank. And there's a fantastic sequence where the quest, inverted commas, has been set, and they have to pretend that they're normal in the bank.
Yeah.
And there's a real sense of rising tension, so that every door creak makes you jump, or anyone who looks askance, or, you're waiting for this to be blown, because these are kind of, ordinary characters put under supreme pressure. Just for our screenwriting students here, what does that look like on the page? When you're writing those kind of sequences, do you write door creaks, security officer glances, what does that look like, or how do you work with the director on that?
Our scenes were quite different. So I suppose Colin took an awful lot of the, the fast-moving scenes where, as you know, there's a lot of moving parts in it. So he would have taken those because he was going to have the camera, he knew where everything was going. Whereas I probably would have taken a lot of the more one-on-one intimate scenes with everyone. So it worked pretty well in that we both knew what the other person was doing, and that was grand. Yeah, I suppose.
When one is writing that on the page, because it is a kind of, I didn't time it, but it seemed like, 10 or 12 minutes at least where you just kind of go, oh God, don't let anything go wrong. On. What does that page look like as a screenwriter?
Well, I suppose there's so many films, heist films, I don't want people saying, well, I know what's going to happen next. Because I hate watching a film and I know it's going to happen 10 minutes in advance because it's so easily set up. I don't like it myself, so I don't want to, give a misservice to the audience. So I think we try to be as unpredictable as we could, and yet have the accurate events happening at the times they happened, and pretty much how everything happened, but with our own little sort of twists involved.
Thank you. Mark, for you now, the opening of your film, I think I timed it. I had to go back and look at it because it was, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes of kind of amazing musical interlude. It's a fantastic introduction of world, because even though we're watching music being played, two characters glancing at each other, and we know pretty much you're setting setting what the film is going to be about. If I may, I've got a couple of questions for you, but if I may ask again, what did that look like on the page for you?
Well, I mean, I do.
Unusual opening.
I don't just concentrate on the dialogues. You do have to write your action descriptions in such a way that the reader sees the picture, and they see. You're through those action descriptions, you're also trying to describe how the passage of time is within a scene, whether it is slow, whether it is broken up and moving fast. And with that, we were trying to establish in a very succinct way the relationship between Bill Evans and Scott LaFaro around the time that they recorded Sunday, The Village Vanguard, one of the greatest live jazz albums of all time. And Scott LaFaro died 2 weeks later. So we had to really fast track those things. And so we had the music, which had allowed us to jump time forward and all that. But I try when I'm writing those things down on the page to make it, because you're going to have executives and producers and funders reading this, so they've got to see it. So I would spend a lot of time on those action descriptions.
Yeah. And again, it's a film where there's kind of a fractured timeline as well, and we're jumping back and forth. Was that a sort of a screenwriter's decision, or?
Yeah, I mean, those were there. It was this. The story is actually, because people kept saying to me, we showed it at Berlin last week, and they were going, "God, it's a really complicated timeline." And I'm like, it's not that complicated actually. There's blocks, and after each block, there's a flash forward into the 70s or early 80s. And the flash forwards are done in colour, and everything else is in black and white. So it was those blocks were all there in the script. I think where we put those inserts, those flash forward inserts, moved a little bit, just because you found after you'd shot it that just for the rhythm of it, to make sure that the pacing was correct. There was one of them especially we had to place inside a sequence rather than at the end of a sequence, but that kind of happens anyway with an editing job.
Can I ask, was that your decision, the black and white and colour?
No, we didn't know whether it was going to work actually, so it was an open question. And then we found that it did work, so we left it as was.
That's beautifully.
I mean, it's in the script. It says we'll flash forward into
that was
colour.
my question. Was that in the script? Okay, interesting.
Did you find the music inform the pace and the edit and the style of?
Well, I used to listen to the music whilst writing it because I wanted it to feel musical, because it's about Bill Evans, but it's at a time in his life when he stopped playing. After the death of Scott LaFaro, he didn't play for 10 months. And so I wanted still the feeling of music to be within the piece. So I listened to his music quite a lot.
I particularly love those scenes when he goes home to his parents, they're so magnificently performed. But again, they are scenes where so much is left unsaid, and those uncomfortable silences and the looks and the glance. I mean, I was like this, I was going, how do you know my mother? But again, on the page, because, I mean, you have fantastic performers and the actors who play the parents. Did you write that as kind of those unsaid kind of statements,
Yeah,
or
I mean,
did that come with later on?
We all come from families, and we very rarely would we say what's wrong with us. We wouldn't go, fundamentally, I find that because you didn't love me as a child, or whatever it is. I mean, I was loved. But usually the arguments you have are kind of tied into something fundamental, but it's usually about a cheese sandwich.
Sure,
do you know what I mean?
sure.
So I was interested in that, how that would happen. I also like to push characters into a place which I call the borderlands of articulacy, where you take them into a place where they have no language to express their fears, their wants, their needs, their real feelings towards each other, and at which point there's nothing else to speak about but a cheese sandwich. So there's a lot of cheese sandwiches.
A lot of cheese sandwich. Yeah, there was a fantastic kind of jagged emotion to it. I mean, I guess you did bring me back. God damn it! You can pay for my next therapy session. That was fantastic.
But we also had brilliant actors, I have to
You
say.
had fantastic
Laurie
actors,
Metcalf was brilliant, and Bill Pullman was absolutely brilliant. And you give them those, and they bring this heft with them.
We should go to questions because we are running out of time. So if we had a mic, does anybody have... I've got a lot more questions, so don't worry if you don't.
Jean, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
It's for the two writers who didn't direct, so for Aisling and Mark, but can you talk us through what it's like to hand it over and trust, obviously, and then...
Get yourself an executive producer role immediately. But I find that I love working with directors. So I would engage with a director before I start writing and talking through exactly what it is you both hope to make, and then making, especially as a writer, writing it for them, saying, look, I hear what you're saying. This is my thesis on the subject matter we have here, and this is what I think you can make really brilliantly. I think it becomes trickier if you have a script in your bottom drawer and you sell it to somebody and they give it to somebody, because there's always then a kind of they will want changes and blah blah, and it becomes trickier. But that can also be a good... my advice to writers is set out your working conditions, but also don't get your back up. People aren't trying to wreck your material. They're trying to find their own way into your material, and you can help them with that.
I was happy to hand it over. Well, for one thing, I feel like it's a little bit like it was Colin's baby initially, so we worked on it together, but it wasn't like I came up with it and wrote it and handed it over. Maybe if it was, I would have been a little bit more like, I have to watch every facet of this. But because of that, I was just excited to see what he would do with it. And I think I've never been a person who's been too bothered about, my precious work or whatever. I just don't care. Please pay me a check and I will write it, and that's the end of it. So yeah, and I people are directors because they're really good at it. They're really good at seeing something that I can't see. So, hand it over, and I think you could be really pleasantly surprised by what comes out of it. So it wasn't an issue for me, and hopefully never will be.
Another question?
I guess this is for anybody on the panel who wants to answer it, but at what point did you realize that you were actually doing a good job? Basically, when did you kick imposter syndrome, if you ever had it, or knew that you weren't going through Dunning-Kruger?
I never had it.
About imposter syndrome.
Look who's fucking running the world. So I would have imposter syndrome. No way. Don't have imposter syndrome. Yeah, I think you know yourself if it's okay. I mean, I think okay, this is okay. And then you'll know this is actually pretty good. If you do it enough times, I think, and if you read enough and write enough and watch enough stuff where you're saying, yeah, my stuff isn't, it's okay. It's not bad compared to this.
But I don't think you ever get rid of imposter syndrome, I think from what I've read, Steven Spielberg and all these people, they still have imposter syndrome. I think what you're talking about is maybe a little humility, I think the moment you stop having imposter syndrome could be a dangerous moment, especially to be a writer.
Doubt can be your friend in the process because it
100%.
makes you question things harder and go deeper on things.
Yeah.
We're on a couch here. May I lie down and start this analysis properly?
At $70 an hour.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think at every step of the way, I'm always questioning to the point of I had a long extended period of writing this movie with Clay, and it quite frankly, the movie sort of it fell apart on two occasions. and you're left thinking, oh, well, geez, well, what was that about, or was it worth it all, you know? So there's always a bit of like, is this the right path? But for me personally, when I got onto the set with Alice and Chris and started implementing some old school, like Meisner techniques with the Alice Krieger, whose first movie was Chariots of Fire, you know, and Alice coming away afterwards to say, you know, no one's ever asked me to do those before, like very basic, simple repetition exercises and so on. So just knowing that I was very, very, it sounds silly, but knowing I was vital for these actors who have had so much more experience than I have was huge for me. And at that point, it was just like, yeah, I'm where I need to be, and I'm needed. You know.
Can I just say as well that there's never a point, especially when you're working in Ireland, there's never a point, you know, you finish your movie, you always have to start, it's like your movie is meaningless, no matter how well it did. You go back to the film, to Screen Ireland, because it's very, very difficult to make an independent movie in Ireland unless Screen Ireland is backing you. There's never a moment when you've made it and whatever you've done is meaningless. You're always starting from scratch every single time. And it's really disheartening, but it's what keeps you alive. It's invigorating.
Sometimes I think we overthink things quite a lot. I mean, if you're a writer, you just write and rewrite and rewrite. And it all depends. Like, so for the feature I did, Anne, I think I rewrote it 6 times. But the first and second drafts were the main ones. The rest is just bits and pieces. Where I have another film in DIFF this year, The Lightkeeper. I'd say I've rewritten that at least 100 times, if not more. As more people, as bigger budget a film gets, the more people get involved. But funnily enough, I did compare the latest version the version I was shot to the very first version I wrote, and it's very, very similar. So sometimes films, scripts have to go on this massive journey all the way around, doing all these things to almost confirm to you that no, it can't go there. It can't go there. It needs to be here. And you need to kind of, I don't know if you find that yourselves, like writing, but I find that I like to send it right around the houses and then pull it right back to get what you want. And just come back to the script itself. I mean, when you write, say the last 2 films I wrote, one was 62 pages, the other one was 54 pages in length. Now they say it must be 90 to 120. And this comes back to the action dialogue and lack of dialogue, like, you know, so, I mean, there's so many different options you can do. So, but for me, the key thing is just keep writing, keep doing it, and believe in yourself.
And just to say, piggyback on something that Mark was saying about action sequences, my tip would be, everyone hates reading. You know, it's impossible to get a read, even in Hollywood. People will pay you to write a screenplay and then they won't read it because they hate reading. My tip would be action sequences, never longer than 3 lines. I could spend a day trying to get a 6-line action sequence to 3 lines. You don't want those big chunks of text. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. That's what people like to read, those little narrow columns of dialogue.
And I can say I am the complete opposite. When I have a script finished, I go back and I keep cutting out the dialogue, cut it out, and get all that action in so you really feel what these people are going through. And for me, that's the most important thing. So I know that's kind of, but I mean, for me, just dialogue out. I think for my short film, The Note, Raiden Gillen, is 22 minutes long, and there's 243 words of dialogue in it.
Before we go, I really want to extend a warm thank you to, beside me, Aisling Karstein, the writer of No Ordinary Heist. Beside her, Mark O'Halloran, Everybody Digs Bill Evans. Glenn McQuaid, The Restoration of Graceland Manor. Kieran Cray, Samantha Nobody, and David Gleeson, Once Upon a Time in a Cinema. And if you haven't got tickets, please do go see them at the Dublin Film Festival or when they get their release, because to be honest, nobody up here can make films if nobody down there is going to see them. So, you know, if you're calling yourself movie makers, then you've got to be movie watchers. Before I go, thank you very much to our wonderful partner at the Dublin Film Festival for, as always, prioritising engagement with students, and to those tuning in at the Irish embassies. A big round of applause to our first year students who have played a blinder here today, and to our producer Percy from third year. And thank you so much for the panelists. I know it's a very busy time for you, and thank you for coming out to the Burbs and visiting us here at the National Film School. We are, as always, grateful.